Greetings, nerdlings, and welcome to AmalgamNation Presents World of Lorecraft, Herocraft, Varian Wrynn edition. This is the first one I've done in a while. As I said in the last vid you guys seen, the last vid I posted, I don't know if you guys seen it or not. Some of you have, some of you haven't. I've been on a bit of a break. I sat down and I said, I'm going to play The Witcher 3. And I didn't plan on taking the break at all. I just said, I'm going to play this and this will be fun. But it was so much fun, I ended up not being on YouTube for an entire month. Or a little over a month, I'm not sure. I'm crap with times. So, bear with me, and as I said, welcome to the vid. Varian Wrynn was born to King Wrynn in the Kingdom of Azeroth, and as a youth lived a joyful and prosperous life as Prince of Stormwind. But all that changed when the orcs appeared from beyond the dark portal and attempted to destroy his homeland, thus ushering in the first war between his beloved Kingdom of Azeroth and the Horde. Anduin Lothar, the champion of Stormwind, rallied his countrymen and armies and gutted out a desperate attempt to hold the Horde at bay and keep them away from King Liane, Varian, and Stormwind. While Lothar enjoyed some small success in holding back the Horde, his efforts were dashed when Garona Halforsen, who had become an ally to Stormwind, betrayed King Liane under orders from the Shadow Council and cut his heart out, giving it to Gul'dan. Varian could only watch helplessly as his father was murdered and the Horde overran his kingdom, burning its homes and slaughtering all who stood in their way. The death of his father affected him greatly. His later closest friend, Artis Menethil, recalls him looking weary and ragged when he first sees him, and says that he'd lost absolutely everything but his life. Convinced that Stormwind could not be retaken, Anduin Lothar gathered Varian and all who remained in the city and led an escape from their homeland, narrowly escaping by boat into the sea. They headed north while Lothar gathered his thoughts aboard his ship. Consulting with Varian and the Kirin Tor mage Khadgar, they determined that in order to preserve humanity from annihilation by the Horde, they would need to warn King Terenas, ruler of Lordaeron, of the danger that loomed on the horizon. After landing at the port of South Shore, Lothar gathered Prince Varian along with Khadgar and several knights and marched towards Lordaeron. Upon arriving, young Varian was greeted by King Terenas, who treated him as an equal king, despite Varian's young age. King Terenas quickly offered him his pledge to stand by him until his homeland was retaken, and invited him to stay with him for as long as Varian was willing. Although at first Varian was slightly shy, being in a kingdom he had never seen before, he quickly overcame his timidity, and Varian found King Terenas' son, Artis Menethil, who was just a few years younger than he, as a great new friend, and the two quickly formed a close friendship. Shortly after he began staying in Lordaeron, King Terenas formed the Alliance of Lordaeron. Under the command of Anduin Lothar, its supreme commander, this alliance was finally able to put an end to the Horde reign during the Second War. However, the victory came at a great price, as Anduin Lothar was killed shortly before the war ended and would not live to see the retaking of his kingdom of Stormwind. After taking up shelter in Lordaeron, Varian quickly became friends with Artis Menethil, who was anxious to meet another young prince. Though most of the time he kept his composure, Varian once broke into tears as Artis tried to console him about the assassination of his father. He was later recalled by Artis as his best friend for much of their childhood and adult lives, and Varian frequently sparred with the less athletic Artis in an attempt to toughen him and make him a better paladin. They built up a friendly rivalry, and a year after Varian was crowned king, they met and sparred on the day of Artis' ascension to the Order of the Silver Hand. Though not outwardly spiteful, Artis frequently lamented that he was not as physically strong as Varian. During the later murder of King Terenas, Artis recalled words that Varian once said about how King Liane was stabbed right through the heart, moments before he plunged Frostmourne through his own father's heart. After Artis' falling in with Scourge and rise to become the new Lich King, Varian began to see him as the ultimate traitor to the Alliance. With Stormwind retaken and slowly being rebuilt thanks to King Tyrannus, who had urged the alliance to help fund the rebuilding of Stormwind. Varian was officially crowned King of Stormwind at the age of 18. King Tyrannus himself was well pleased with how Varian had grown into a clever and noble king, feeling a father's pride as he had grown attached to Varian over the years, considering Varian his second son. The stonemasons led by Edwin Van Cleef came to lend their help in rebuilding Stormwind and hoped to forge a new future for themselves with aspirations that riches would soon follow their work's completion. During his reign as king, Varian left Stormwind City under the stewardship of the House of Nobles and travelled to the many corners of his kingdom to protect his people from raiding orc parties, meeting with spies who were searching for the assassin Garona and directing the restoration of his kingdom. After many months, Stormwind was finished, reborn as a kingdom of majesty and architectural brilliance, eclipsing even its once pristine condition before the First War. It was during this time of renewed tranquility that Varian would marry a young, beautiful woman named Tiffin and conceive a son, Anduin, named after Anduin Lothar. However, the alliance soon began fracturing, and the elven kingdom of Quel'Thalas, along with the human kingdoms of Stromgarde and Gilneas, seceded or left. Despite this, King Varian vowed he would stand by King Tyrannus and the alliance, as they stood by him in his time of need. It was also during this time that the stonemasons who had rebuilt Stormwind demanded to be paid for their service to King Varian and the House of Nobles. However, the corrupt House of Nobles, under the influence of Catrana Prestor, refused to adequately pay the guild for its work. King Varian was unable to negotiate a resolution because the nobility held too much political power and outmaneuvered him repeatedly. Though the stonemasons were compensated for their work, they received a fraction of the pay they had earned, and so Edwin Van Cleef and the stonemasons set to rioting in the streets of Stormwind, demanding just compensation. The riot was dangerous and chaotic, and in the confusion Varian's young queen was killed by a stone thrown. Edwin Van Cleef fled Stormwind with the stonemasons while Varian mourned Tiffin's death. He fell into a great depression, but over time regained his determination and vowed to continue to create a new and better world for himself, his son, and the people of Stormwind. Varian was never seen during the events of Warcraft 3, though it is known that Stormwind had sent many troops to support Lordaeron during the Scourge Assault. Varian agreed to give shelter to the Lordaeron refugees in Stormwind and send the armies of Stormwind to Hillsbrad to retake Southshore. It was also at this time the outpost of Chillwind Point was established between the now corrupt Plaguelands and Alterac. With the fall of Lordaeron, Varian had become the leader of the alliance, and Stormwind had become the strongest remaining human kingdom. After the dust had settled from the Third War, Varian journeyed to Theramore to speak with Lady Jaina Proudmoore regarding Horde and Alliance relations. En route, he was abducted by the Defias, who had been told of his diplomatic trip through a spy rumoured to live within the kingdom of Stormwind itself. Rumours circulated that he was taken to Alcaz Island and was held captive there. These rumours were true. Shortly after King Varian was kidnapped, Bolvar Fordragon was made Regent Lord of Stormwind and vowed to find and rescue King Varian at any cost. Lady Prestor also became a royal advisor and convinced High Lord Bolvar to have King Varian's 10-year-old son, Anduin Wrynn, crowned King of Stormwind, though the actual power remained in Fordragon's hands until either Varian was returned or Anduin reached the age of ascension. Varian somehow managed to escape his confinement and leave the island, though his bid for freedom was not wholly successful. Half drowned and suffering from memory loss, he was found washed up on the shores of Durotar by a caravan of orcs led by the gladiator trainer Rhaegar Erdfury. After successfully fighting off an enormous crocolisk using only a stick, he was captured and enslaved as a gladiator by the impressed shaman. Unaware of the human's true identity, Erdfury humorously nicknamed his new slave Crocbait and threw him into a cage with his other two gladiator slaves, Brol Baremantle and Valera Sanguinar. That night, in order to help him remember his past, Brol placed Varian in a trance wherein he saw a vision of himself as a child in a burning city. After arriving in Orgrimmar, Rhaegar led the trio to the secret armory of the Crimson Ring in the Hall of Legends, where after seeing a familiar-looking lion-headed plate belt, Varian received another flashback. A bald, bearded man stands on the deck of a boat in a storm, wearing the belt and called Varian Lad. Eventually the three travelled to Diremal in Feralis, where the gladiatorial contest took place. After many bloody battles, they emerged the victors of the Crimson Ring tournament. Impressed by Varian's skills at arms, the crowd gave him the orcish moniker Logosh, which means Ghost Wolf. After the fight, Rhaegar took Logosh and Brol to the Tauren city Thunderbluff for a cleansing ritual in the pools of vision. In the waters of the pools, Logosh saw another vision, a fair-haired female who was ostensibly his wife holding an infant boy, telling him that his people and his son need him. Unfortunately, his vision was interrupted by a cave elemental, which he subsequently defeated. Nevertheless, having learned more of his past, he planned to escape from Rhaegar at the next possible opportunity. In thanks for defeating the cave elemental, Brol and Logosh were invited to the tent of Hamul Runetotem, elder druid of the Tauren. He told Varian the legend of the original Logosh, a massive white wolf beast renowned for its ferocity in battle, already 10,000 years old when the Burning Legion first invaded Azeroth. According to the Archdruid, the wolf's legend extended through Azeroth to trolls, goblins, and dwarfs, who all had their own versions of the story. In each tale, Logosh's unyielding will and sheer ferocity enabled him to push through the boundaries of the afterlife to aid his people. Hamul then gave Logosh a feather, which Brol immediately recognized as belonging to a hippogriff. The Night Elf used it to call Sharp Talon from Ashenvale and immediately made a bid for freedom with Logosh. Brol and Logosh eventually reached the Cenarian Enclave in Darnassus and were summoned to dinner by Tyrande Whisperwind. Tyrande sent the two to Terramore, where Jaina Proudmoore would be able to help restore his memories. Upon arriving in Terramore, Jaina vowed to Logosh that she would unravel the mystery surrounding him, and called upon her chamberlain Aegwynn to help. Breaching the dark aura surrounding Logosh's memories, visions revealed a fire and a voyage, the birth of his son, the death of his wife, and new darkness. Despite an invisible wall preventing Jaina and Aegwynn from further delving into his memories, they were able to confirm that he had been travelling to Terramore and that he was in fact Varian Wrynn, the lost King of Stormwind. Clearly having been the victim of a dark magic attack, Jaina prepared one of her own ships to carry Logosh to Stormwind in the Eastern Kingdoms, where she hoped he would learn the identity of his enemies. Now knowing that his wife is dead, Logosh was eager to return to Stormwind and reunite with his son, though Aegwynn advised him that circumspection was necessary, as Anduin could be endangered by any hasty actions. On the docks, Brol and Logosh reunited with Valyria and prepared to set out for Stormwind. While Logosh, Brol and Valyria were travelling on the wave cutter, Jaina Proudmoore's private vessel, Varian contemplated the revelations Jaina had told him. Despite being revealed as one of the rulers of the Alliance, he became unsure if he truly wanted to resume being Varian Wrynn. If he had a choice, he would remain as Logosh, a simple gladiator. Doubts began to fill Logosh's head as they travelled to Menethil Harbour. During a Naga attack at sea, Logosh had another glimpse into his lost memory. Remembering the Defias abducting him on his diplomatic mission to Terramore, the Naga attacking him on Alkaz Island for ransom, the funeral for his beloved wife Tiffin, and the day he was crowned King of Stormwind. Almost all of Logosh's memory had been returned, except some vital parts of his abduction. Jubilant throngs of Stormwind subjects turned out for a massive ceremony to welcome home their king. However, the Varian that returned was arrogant, frivolous, and markedly interested in Katrana Prestor. The people of Stormwind had only been informed that Defias had ransomed the king, a ransom paid with a painful new tax. Upon his return, however, Varian seemed concerned only with spending more of his people's money, leaving affairs of state by the wayside. Anduin Wrynn was distressed by his father's change. Around the same time, Logosh appeared at Menethil Harbour with Brol and Valyria. The group had a chance encounter with a drunkard in Menethil Harbour who ran after realising that Varian was still alive. Logosh and his companions gave chase with the intent of having a conversation. The man ran to a bar filled with Defias members who attempted to take out Varian again. During the fight, Logosh met Targus Anvilmar, an emissary from Magni Bronzebeard, whose brother had once trained the king. Though the drunk escaped, Logosh found a Defias mage to question. Though the mage did not reveal who wanted Varian dead, he said that the person had paid in Stormwind gold. The mage mocked Logosh by claiming that his son would be murdered. The three gladiators and Targus then continued on their way to Stormwind. A few days later in Stormwind City, King Magni Bronzebeard was on a visit and was discussing war plans against the orcs and the Dark Iron dwarves with King Varian and Bolvar Fordragon. However, Varian Wrynn did not want to send troops to help the dwarves against the Dark Irons. King Magni left disappointed, but while going to the Deep Run tram, he was met by the young Prince Anduin Wrynn, who told the Dwarven King he too suspected something about his father. Sometime later, as Anduin was practicing his archery with his father and inquired him how he was kidnapped by the Defias and wondered how he came in the hands of the Naga for a ransom, to which his father told him his past was blank and he could not recall any events. Upon arriving at Ironforge, Logosh was informed by King Magni that much of what had transpired was no coincidence, and that someone was secretly orchestrating the events, knowing of Varian's significant importance to the Alliance. Magni had previously enlisted the aid of High Lord Bolvar Fordragon and Marshal Windsor at the behest of young Anduin, who suspected the Varian in Stormwind to be an impostor. Varian, having studied sword fighting with Windsor for years, held a deep respect for him as a friend and ally. A disturbingly short time after Marshal Windsor began his investigation, he had come to the conclusion that the impostor Varian may not only be an impostor, but a dragon. As Logosh and Magni continued to converse, they were secretly being followed by a bearded man. Valeris sensed arcane energy being manipulated and witnessed the man creating a dagger with the intent to kill Logosh. Valera quickly subdued the man, but he transformed into a black dragon and fled. Outside Stormwind, Anduin, Varian, Bolvar, and Lady Prestor were riding horseback through the countryside, with Anduin trying to implore his father to listen to Stormwind's problems. But before he could elaborate, his horse was purposely roused by an unknown assailant, causing Anduin to lose control and tumble over a ledge. Varian swiftly caught Anduin, and upon making physical contact, his mind was enveloped with visions of the Defias carrying him while knocked out, strapped to the ground and covered in a ruined circle, with robed figures casting dark magic, being chased on Alkaz Island by Naga, and finally jumping over a cliff and reaching for branches just beyond his reach. Anduin, embracing his father, lost any doubts about him being an impostor. Varian started to tell Bolvar, Anduin, and Lady Prestor about his visions, until Lady Prestor touched him and remarked how astonished she was by his nobility. Bolvar surmised that Varian becomes befuddled when around her and loses his honour and respect for others, and becomes more anxious in discovering the secrets of Varian's abduction and sudden return, knowing this would lead to trouble. Via magic, Bolvar informed King Magni that Windsor's report indicated he was close to discovering the dragon's identity, but was captured by Dark Iron dwarves in Blackrock Depths. Logosh and his allies mounted and rode to Blackrock Depths and rescued Windsor, who revealed to Varian what he had discovered regarding his investigation. Marching through the gates of Stormwind, Logosh and his friends were halted by General Marcus Jonathan under the direct jurisdiction of Katrana Prestor, who ordered their immediate arrest and execution as traitors. Windsor succeeded in convincing Marcus of his loyalty to Stormwind, as they had previously served together under Terralion. Katrana Prestor hastily gathered soldiers, only to have the false Varian tell her that she was disobeying the chain of command and was not in charge of Stormwind. Entering Stormwind Keep, Logosh declared Katrana's masquerade was over and called her by her true name, Onyxia. Revealing her dragon form and transforming multiple guards into dragon spawn, Varian and his allies began battle in the Great Hall of Stormwind Keep. The arrival of High Lord Bolvar Fordragon, along with Anduin, greatly aided them in securing the keep, but Reginald Windsor was killed moments later by Onyxia. Logosh engaged his doppelganger doppelganger, claiming he threatened the stability of his kingdom and nearly cost the alliance Tandal's span, only to have his doppelganger retort he was starting to repress her spells and regain control of his actions. Anduin, surprised by seeing two variants, urged them to stop fighting to face the true threat, the broodmother Onyxia. The great dragon snatched Anduin and teleported them to her lair, daring Varian to follow suit. Regrouping with his friends, Varian was left to grieve the loss of his son and told his friends the final battle would end in Onyxia's lair. Relinquishing command of Stormwind to Bolvar, his old friend begins to sense that despite two Varians commanding Stormwind, they both carried polar opposite personalities. Logosh was incredibly anxious to find his son, while showing incredible will in commanding his troops, while the other Varian was calm, passive, and charming ever since ridding himself of Onyxia's influence. Arriving in Terramore, they all met up with Jaina, and she told them she had discovered what dark magic was used on them in an old tome. Jaina came up with the theory that Onyxia greatly gained influence with Varian after his wife's death, but periodically lost control as Varian's attachment to Anduin grew, so she attempted to reassert her control by using a spell that would not kill Varian, but would remove and destroy his conscience, will, and responsibility. Jaina cast enchantments around the two Varians, and they recalled the last part of their abduction, being on Alkaz Island, tied to the ground, cloaked figures casting dark magic, causing unbearable pain as he desperately tries to break himself free. In a blinding flash of light, he awakes to find himself laying next to an exact duplicate. Onyxia unmasked herself, intending to kill the strong-willed Varian, but is stopped by the arrival of Morgalla Darksquall and her Naga. The cloaked figures and Onyxia turn into dragonkin and battle the Naga, while the strong-willed Varian breaks himself free and begins to fight. He tried to free the other Varian and implores him to find a weapon, but discovered his other is too unnerved to properly wield a weapon. The other Varian is knocked off a cliff, falls into the ocean, and is captured by the Naga. Varian is left alone to fight and tricks Onyxia into believing she had killed him. Pleased, Onyxia left before more Naga appeared. Morgalla attempted to capture Varian, but he fled to another side of the island and jumped into the ocean, knowing he wouldn't be followed as that part of the ocean contained many rock shoals. His escape failed, however, as the strong tide overpowered him and he swept away to the shores of Durotar. Back in Jaina's tower, both Varians came to the startling conclusion they are both the same person, and at the same time only half of what they should be. Jaina explained that although Onyxia's spell split them in half, they were both able to fight past the spell and regain who they truly were, even though they both lived as separate beings. One Varian became Logosh, the gladiator champion of the Crimson Ring, and fought to regain his memories and birthright. The other Varian was ransomed and returned to Stormwind, and was further ensorcelled by Onyxia. While bereft of will, he would break free once again. After a moment, Jaina unveiled two ancient elven swords, Shalator the Shadow Render and Elamain the Reaver. After receiving their new weapons, both Varians decreed retribution would finally be brought to Onyxia. Leading an assault against Onyxia, both Varians engaged her in battle. Weapons and magic clashed with her numerous dragonkin, and both sides determined to win. Onyxia cast a fear spell on Brawl and tail-swiped Jaina, removing them from the battle after growing agitated by their constant spellcasting. Becoming desperate to end the fight, Onyxia began casting the spell she was going to use on Alkaz Island to kill Logosh, but Logosh's double responded by stepping in front of the blast, saying he should die because Logosh was the embodiment of the true Varian. Not willing to sacrifice his double, Logosh leapt alongside his other self, hoping to save him. The magic spell became disrupted by having the two Varians in the spell, and after a moment of silence, Varian emerged, his two halves fused back together. Onyxia desperately tried to incinerate him, but Varian swiftly reached Onyxia's head and impaled her with his newly fused elven sword, Shalamain. With Onyxia dead, Varian reunited with his son and friends, telling them their long and noble deeds would be rewarded and Stormwind would be reborn with a new hope for the future. Okay, I'm going to stop this vid here because this is only about halfway through the lore for this one guy. This is how awesome King Varian Wrynn was. Fucking love this character. Sorry about that fanboying there over him, but he's fucking awesome. Or he was fucking awesome. Thank you for watching, and as always, remember, play to game and game to play.